Hey everyone, for those of you who are not new here, bear with me for a moment while I fill everyone else in. I am a person who used to have a career as a neurotrauma ICU RN. I'm also a person who has been pretty much a drug fiend most of his life, and ultimately I got addicted to heroin and meth and lost my nursing career. Ended up running around doing drugs, selling drugs to support my habit, and then I got arrested and sentenced to 3 to 10 years in prison. And I'm currently on house arrest, just about to be finished up with that 3 years. I did a year in prison, 2 years on house arrest, and it's almost the 3 year mark now. On this channel, I talk about my story and my experiences, but I also am investigating why it is that I'm finding so much success in just wellness, sobriety, happiness over these last few years, regardless of the situation that I'm in. And I recently came across this YouTube video that talked about something seemingly unrelated, but it struck me as a helpful way for me to frame my own situation in my head and kind of what I've been experiencing. So in this video, I'm real quickly just gonna talk about the video that I saw, and there's really this analogy that I'm focusing in on that I found to be very helpful. So I'm going to describe sort of the context of the analogy as I heard it, and then apply it to my situation as I see it. So the video was on this channel called Goobie and Doobie, and I'll link the video in the description if anyone's interested. But it's a video where a MIT educated neurosurgeon is talking about how he became disillusioned with the medical industry and ended up quitting being a neurosurgeon. So he describes the reasons that he got into being a neurosurgeon in the first place, and he talks about how his goal was to relieve suffering. That was his primary concern. Now, as a neurosurgeon, he not only operated on the brain, but he also did spinal surgeries, a lot of back surgeries. And he talks mostly about the back surgeries in the video, because he said mostly is what he was doing was back surgeries, because people need back surgeries a lot more often than they need brain surgery. So he talks about his back surgeries that he was performing, and I'm going to move this because it's kind of getting dark in here. Okay, so he's performing these back surgeries, and after years of doing this, he starts to recognize a pattern. And the pattern is not the case with every single one of his patients, but the pattern is prevalent enough that he's concerned about it. And the pattern is this. He starts to notice that the nature of the surgery and the performance of the surgery itself, how well it went, whether or not it was even if it was a perfect surgery, is not correlating well with the outcomes of the patients. And in his mind, he's thinking, well, if there's like a structural problem with the spine, and we identify it and we do surgery on it, and I perform a perfect surgery, then the problem should resolve, right? And this is just not the case. So he starts to investigate more into the patient themselves as a human being. And he starts asking questions to his patients, like, lifestyle questions. What's your lifestyle like? What's your personal life like? How good of sleep do you get? Do you exercise? What's your diet like? How are your relationships in your life? Do you have strong relationships? Do you have any psychological issues that you struggle with? Are you anxious? Are you depressed? He starts to recognize that the patients who are willing to get serious about making changes there on that level get better regardless of surgery. In fact, he talks about having these experiences where he would encourage these lifestyle changes, but he would still schedule their surgery for, a few months out. And the patients who really got serious about making these changes would call him before that surgery was scheduled and say, hey, my symptoms have resolved. Do I still need surgery? And he said in many cases they wouldn't need surgery. The other thing he notes is that the patients who didn't make these lifestyle changes could have the surgery, and he could perform a perfect surgery, as he called it, and he would find that it might help them for a little while, but they would be back in his office with new complaints, maybe about the same area, but oftentimes about a new thing that popped up. That there's this other area now that's causing issues, and now they need surgery for that as well. So after years of encountering this, he starts to wonder, what am I doing here? I got into this to relieve suffering, and it seems that the thing that is involved in my specialty, which is performing surgery, is not relieving suffering as effectively as merely encouraging people to get serious about addressing their lifestyle, which was remarkable to me when I heard it too, because it seems like the spine is such a structural, spinal issues are such a structural thing that it seems crazy to think that, such a mechanical issue would be resolved by lifestyle changes and just, addressing your mental health. But that is what he had to report about this, and he started to think of it in terms of this analogy, and this analogy I found to be very helpful, and this is where I'll jump to the addiction thing and my experience with that. So the analogy is this: he said, picture a house where you got your roof, and then your walls of the house, and the roof has a leak in it, and the water is running down and causing damage to the wall in the house. And he said that he began to feel like the things that he was doing, the surgeries and the medications that he was prescribing, were like addressing that wall, trying to fix the wall, tearing out the drywall, tearing out the insulation and replacing it, without addressing the leak in the roof. Because without addressing the leak in the roof, which was basically the prior causes of this water damage in the wall, then you're just going to constantly have to be repairing this wall forevermore. And it's just going to get harder and harder and worse as you have to do it over and over and again. And that analogy kind of set a light bulb off for me, because I was thinking that if something, again, as structural and mechanical as the spine is being addressed by just lifestyle changes, then it's much easier to understand how the mind can be negatively affected by poor lifestyle choices. And in my mind, when we're talking about addiction issues, what we're really talking about is mental health. So to hop back over to my experience, I've had issues with unhealthy attachments to substances for most of my adult life. And as the years went along, the issues only became more and more severe. And at some point along the line, it became apparent to the people around me that I had issues, and to me, and I started trying to address it the way that we all try to address it, which is to get help, traditional help. I've read a lot of addiction literature. I've gone through programs. I've gone through rehab, inpatient rehab. I even worked at a rehab for a while. I've done step work. I've gone to meetings, done all of that stuff. And when I look back on it now, I feel like all of that stuff, for me at least, never really hit home. It never really sunk in as that valuable. I mean, there were valuable things about it at times, and there were valuable aspects to it, but for me personally, it just never really resonated. And I always found myself going back to the drugs. And when I think back on it now, it seems to me, at least it feels to me, like that all that stuff was kind of like addressing the wall, right? But when we think about addiction, there has to be a prior cause, right? There is a leak in the roof, because nobody who is living well, nobody who is mentally healthy is going to become a hardcore drug addict. If you're really healthy physically and mentally, then you aren't going to treat yourself like that. You're not going to self-destruct like that. You're not going to hurt yourself like that. And we're not born drug addicts, right? We become drug addicts because drugs are appealing to us for some reason, because they're fixing some issue that we have, which is the preceding problem, which is like the leak in the roof. There is some deeper issue that precedes the addiction. There has to be. And what I've realized over these last 3 years of being clear-headed and just really having this opportunity to deeply investigate, what has been going on with me my whole adult life, and what was happening before, and what's the difference now. What I've discovered is that I feel like I've really, for the first time in my life, begun to address life at the leak level, and not at the wall level. So what does that mean? It means that I've started to figure out what my psychological issues were that were drawing me to these drugs. And I've also started to realize that the lifestyle that I was living before this was unhealthy, and it was preventing this thing from running well. And when this thing isn't running well, it also affects the mind, obviously. And my mind was in a sick place. And that's why the drugs were so appealing, is because I didn't feel well, and I felt like I needed something to pacify me from this constant not feeling well. And I didn't even realize how unwell I felt, because I didn't know what it was like to really feel well. And that's what I'm discovering now, is what it's like to actually feel well. And it's not just like an overnight thing. This has been a process that I've been going through, and I've kind of committed myself these past 3 years to really getting serious about just figuring out what works for me and what's important to me as far as living well and making this body and this mind function at a level that is optimal. And I haven't achieved an optimal level yet, but I don't know if that's actually possible. Like, there's some ultimate optimal level that you get to that, that's, I don't know if that's a reality. But just the focus on it, and just the taking that seriously and making that the priority in my life, putting that before anything else. They say a lot in addiction recovery is you got to put your sobriety first before everything else. But what I've found is that just putting my wellness before everything else has been so much more effective than addressing life in terms of just focusing on the drug problem level. The drug problem was a side effect of the prior issue. And not that the drug problem isn't the problem in and of itself. It's the result of a prior issue. And so now that I've addressed the prior issue, or I'm addressing it in a serious way for the first time, I find that all of my drug issues have kind of fallen away on their own. I don't, do step work. I don't go to meetings. I mean, I do sometimes when somebody who's like a friend of mine wants me to go to a virtual one, or when I was in prison, I went to meetings every week, just regularly, because that's what was going on, and it was nice to be around the people who were focused on something more forward thinking. And so I've had a lot of lovely encounters and lovely experiences in meetings and around other people, and made close friends with people who do that stuff. And so I still, have one foot in the door with that stuff sometimes, but it's just not my focus at all. And I don't experience cravings. I never experience a desire to use at all. That's not to say that I think that I'm in this permanent state where it'll never happen again. I can't tell the future. I don't know what other leaks in the roof might pop up that could lead me back in that direction. So I'm very vigilant of that. But I just find that I'm interested in my life now, and what it's like to just live well, and that's the priority. And the drugs just aren't they don't take up any of my mental space anymore. My life is beautiful. I mean, I'm incarcerated still. I'm on an ankle monitor still. I haven't even been out yet, and already my life is beautiful. I feel like I've found the path that I was just lost for so long. And it's so much easier now. I mean, there was a point there where I did have to kind of get behind myself and push, but it's become so much easier now. And I can honestly say that today, and for the past 3 years almost, I have truly, deeply been happier than I've ever been before in my life. And right now I have nothing. I have really nothing. Like, I'm starting from scratch in my life. And before, I had so much materially. I had everything. And on the outside, it looked like the ideal situation. But right now, it feels like my life today is the ideal situation. I'm a convicted felon now. I'm on house arrest still. I haven't been able to roam free since all this started, and still, just my life is perfect already. I can't wait to find out, what else there is to explore. I'm excited about the goals I set. I have ambition like I've never had before. And there was this period where I thought, maybe I'm just in a pink cloud. I had a pink cloud experience before when I went to rehab, and I got out, and I thought I would be better forever. And so, being leery of the experience now because of having had that experience, for a while I was just like, okay, when is this going to fade away? When is this going to fade away? But what's been happening is actually it's just been getting stronger and stronger. As I go along, I feel more and more okay, and more healthy, and more focused, and more determined to just live well and keep that as my priority, regardless of whatever happens materially, whatever opportunities pop up or not, whether things work out, things that I'm working on, or interests I have, whether they work out or not, that all seems like just fun stuff to engage in. It's like playing. You're playing life. I'm playing this character Brian, who gets to go through this life, and it's not threatening anymore. It's all just seems fun and engaging, because regardless of all that, I'm already finding this wellness in myself now. So that's what I've been thinking about. That's what's been on my mind. And you know, I always say this on this channel, but you know, my intention here is never to say that whatever works for anyone else is it's the wrong thing. I'm just talking about my own experience here. You know, I've seen people have remarkable success doing traditional recovery stuff, and that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Some people find the real gold in those programs and in doing that stuff, and that's wonderful. That's remarkable and good for you if you're one of those people. I mean, I just love that you found your thing and found your way through this crazy thing that we call hardcore addiction. But I'm just here to share my own experience and try to share it with you as authentically as I can, so that maybe it'll be helpful for somebody who hears this. All right, if you made it this far, thanks for watching, and take care of yourself. And for all of you who are regular viewers of this content, I'll see you on the next one.